Welcome back to the Dylan Goler Show. I am your host, Dylan Goler. Avatar was a 2009 film directed by James Cameron. The movie is about a man named Jake Sully, who is a disabled Marine. He goes to Pandora to try and figure out how the natives of that land think, that way he can help the Marines extract their natural resource, unobtainium. Along the way, he meets a woman, and he finds a spiritual connection that connects everything in the planet, and eventually falls in love and decides he wants to be one of them. Today, I am very lucky to be joined by someone who I admire deeply, Sean Chandler. Sean is the host of the YouTube channel Sean Chandler Talks About, a nerdy YouTube channel with over 225,000 subscribers. So I know there's a lot of people who don't like Avatar. And the thing is, I was rewatching a lot of James Cameron movies recently, and I think this one might be my favorite out of the bunch. And the reason why I say that is because what I really like about the movie is the world it sets up. In the movie, it sets you up with a community, a god, and a spiritual connection to everything, and you want to learn more about it. And when I was thinking about this movie, I was listening to some audio commentary by James Cameron. And what I realized, the movie is not all about Pandora. It's all about Earth. Pandora is a symbol of Earth. There's a line in the movie that I love, and it's one of my all-time favorite lines in cinema. And it's Jake Sully interacting with the tribe, and he says, "I fell in love with the forest, with the people, and with you." What I really like about this is that this movie has a lot of spiritual connection to everything. It's about our connection to God, to each other, and to the planet. And so when it comes down to that, it really gives me a sense of purpose in the universe. And that's the beauty of cinema. If it can connect you to something, then you know a movie has done a good job. And Cameron uses CGI and 3D and spectacle to do that. Now, I will fully acknowledge the story is very derivative in just about every way. But Cameron does enough that it honestly is forgivable. So that's my take on it, guys. I know a lot of people will disagree, but that's just sort of how I feel. Sean, what do you think?
So, in a certain sense, I will vehemently disagree with you. In another sense, we're not terribly far off. On the one hand, you said it was possibly your favorite James Cameron film. Of the real James Cameron films, this is my least favorite of the bunch. He also did Piranha 2, but he didn't really do Piranha 2. So that's a terrible film. But of the real ones, this is my least favorite. Granted, I think that all of it hit the low bar of real James Cameron films is very good. And I think at worst, Avatar is a familiar, tremendous experience. And for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned, that he just is able to create these worlds that suck you in. And I watched through all of his movies over the last month, and whether he's taking you back to 1912 and putting you on the Titanic and just getting you into the optimism of all these people so excited of being on this ship, even though we know, oh, this is going bad. Yeah. We know that, but he sucks you into that world of how excited everyone is about the potential, or he creates this planet and he just takes you into it. And whether through just to state what everybody has been saying for 13 years, just jaw-dropping CGI that 13 years later is still, it's better than virtually all CGI and blockbusters, maybe Thanos, but it's better than everything else in CGI in the MCU besides Thanos. Just astounding. And what's so incredible about it is you can't really see the line between reality and blue people. And you don't know, are the trees real? I know those pink things that are floating, those don't exist. And I know blue people don't exist. But you can't tell. He just creates believable images that draw you in. And as someone I don't see anything in 3D, and neither does my wife, unless James Cameron puts it out. And he just creates a world that you're I'm in this thing. And you can only describe it as an experience. And he's so good at that. And so with this immersive experience combined with a movie designed, as you talked about so well, the world building of just selling you on this planet, their belief system, and how everything ties together with meaning and everything like that. He's just, all of it is about sucking you into this world. And then you get to a point in time in the movie and they literally cut down the tree that's at the center of everything that they've spent all this time selling you on. And so it just feels like they're getting punched in the gut, even though, as you touched on, and I'll touch on quite a bit more, this is a template for movies like this, that at that point in time in the movie, that exact percentage through the movie, you do something that's just this gut punch. It's a total cliche trope of this genre, but he sells you on the world. He sells you on all of this, and so you just feel it. And as a human, you just want virtually all the humans to be killed because of it. And then, of course, he's just great at the spectacle and everything like that. But that's what he just does so well. And like it's kind of like people talk about, like, what was it that made Avatar make $3 billion as a standalone film 13 years ago? It was such a unique experience that, like, you want to go to the movies to escape this world and experience this different thing, and he created that. Now, that's the incredible direction of his building these worlds and special effects. Comes to the script. For me, the reason that it's at that bottom spot is because that experience at the theater only works at the theater. So in the 13 years since it's come out, I've only rewatched Avatar for the purpose of literally videos on my channel. I don't like, it's not like Tuesday afternoon, like, hey, honey, let's watch Avatar tonight. But Random Tuesday will be like, Terminator 2. She'll be like, let's do it. Aliens, let's do it. Pretty much every other one has that kind of rewatchability to me. And it goes back to, it's a story that has been done before. The jokey version is it's Pocahontas, it's Fern Gully with blue aliens. The probably better comparison would be Dances with Wolves or The Last Samurai, which are very similar films. And a lot of just the exact beats, the exact same character arc for your main character. That's the broken veteran that goes in initially cynically and then falls in love with the culture and switches sides after the tragic event. Like, all of that, it's meat for meat in these other ones. And so, like, for me, like, if I'm going to score the film, I'll probably, I'd probably give it like a B+. Like, just, and as a movie experience, it's probably like an A. Right? It's an A+. It's like a thing you have to experience. As a movie lingering afterwards, it's still wonderfully executed. I wrote in my notes when I rewatched it, maybe the slickest execution of a movie formula ever. It was something like that. It was something like that. It was like, man, like, it's immaculate in its execution of something I've seen before. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it. Now tell me why I'm wrong on this.
When it comes down to it, a lot of movies, if you take a look at them, they're all a bag of cliches. So, for example, I was thinking about the Marvel formula. I was in the movie theater watching Wakanda Forever recently, and I'll say this: there's a lot of things I like about the movie, but for the most part, I genuinely hate the film. And spoilers if you haven't seen Wakanda Forever, but there's a scene where Queen Ramonda dies, and the funeral. I was watching this funeral, and I was starting to chuckle because the funeral was basically every MCU funeral I have seen recently. So I was thinking about this: in Spider-Man: No Way Home, Aunt May dies, and so she doesn't necessarily get a funeral, but all the other Spider-Mans come and visit Tom Holland's Spider-Man. They give him a speech of why he should get back out there and start, and he has a responsibility. Now, the Wakanda Forever funeral simply went as, Shuri, you have a responsibility. You must get back out there. And that's how it went for all the MCU movies. So when you really think about it, every movie's a bag of cliche. Black Adam is probably the most recent example of every cliche I've ever seen in a superhero movie. When it comes down to Avatar, though, Avatar proves that the cliches actually work. And while yes, it is a copy and paste of everything, Avatar has enough difference that I feel kind of can stand by itself. So I was talking about this, but the movie is all about our connection to the planet and to each other and to God. And that's something I felt that we lost in the modern world of all this technology, is everything is about us. And so Avatar in this generation speaks to this generation specifically in a way that Last Samurai might not these days. Like, if I polled a bunch of my friends, I can guarantee you most of them haven't seen The Last Samurai. Now, The Last Samurai, it's a pretty great movie, but all of them can say that they've seen Avatar, and of course they'll have very different opinions on it. But Avatar speaks to this generation because in this world of technology, everything's about us, and it's about taking. And Avatar says, whoa, wait. We need to preserve the natural world. We need to think about each other and our communities and our responsibilities to each other and even to God. So I don't know if you would agree with me on that.
I think where I wouldn't even try to push back is on even what you're saying there at the end. That's not the side where I'd even make an argument, because I think I'd agree. I works on all those levels. I would say what Avatar to me, it's not just that like there's cliche evidence, because every movie is borrowing something from some movie. And so you can look at, Wakanda Forever and say, this funeral is just like Spider-Man No Way Home, and you go, that is true. Okay, every time they do a funeral, it's that same thing. But when I look at Avatar, it's not just a scene, a beat. It's like when I watched the movie, and I saw Last Samurai in the theater. I guess most of the other ones, I didn't see Ferngully and Pocahontas in the theater, but I'd seen these other movies prior to seeing Avatar.
Yeah.
And so I just immediately was like, okay, I know the formula here. Okay. And there's even, if you can really break it down, but there's always like the brother or the other love interest person. Yeah. Like there's all of these other like really specific things. And when you stack them next to each other, that's where it starts to feel like, and especially, Dances with Wolves, won Best Picture 30 years ago, and it's, overtly about Native Americans. Obviously, this movie is borrowing Native American culture for the Na'vi. And so then there's like too many things that, like, for me, having seen those ones, I'm over 20 years older than you and your friends. And so I grew up on a different set of films, but that set of films was like, I loved Last Samurai. And oh man, this movie's awesome. And then, 5 years later, I go see Avatar, and it's like, this is awesome, but it's not nearly as fresh. Yeah. And to say it like Last Samurai came out over 10 years after Dances with Wolves, 10 years after Pocahontas, Ferngully, and I don't hold that against Last Samurai. But there's 3 movies in the decade prior that I could use that same argument. Why Avatar one movie later, it bugs me more, I'm not really sure. Maybe that, once again, is my age of when I was like falling in love with films. I'm in my early 20s. I see Last Samurai and went, oh, this is so cool. And then I watched Dances with Wolves afterwards. The order in which you watch things changes your experience with it. So that's kind of where I'm coming into it, of like, I can't watch the movie without seeing the template, the formula. And it's like you said at the beginning, how people hate this movie. And for a long time, I thought it was, more just kind of the knee jerk of like, it was so popular, so people love to hate the thing that's popular. Yeah. Then enough time passes and it's not really that. It's just kind of people's take on it. I'm at Thanksgiving dinner with my sister 3 weeks ago, a month ago, whatever that was, and she hates Avatar. She hates it. She's like, it's Pocahontas with blue people. It's terrible. It's like, but it's not terrible. It's a wonderfully executed film that sticks to a formula. And so I think there's people that overstate it, like my sister. Sister, if you're watching this, how dare you?
The thing about Avatar is that every movie gets to speak to a certain generation. So when you say every movie, when you watch things when you watch certain movies in a certain order, then it just sort of loses flavor. And that's sort of at the point I am with superhero movies. The first Iron Man movie came out when I was like super little, and so I've grown up with the MCU. And as I got older, I've completely turned away from the MCU. Now, for me, I don't think I've seen Last Samurai, and I believe I've seen Pocahontas. I don't think I've seen Dances with Wolves. I need to check that out. But I saw the first Avatar movie. I didn't get to see it in the theaters, unfortunately. So I saw it at like 6 years old. And when I saw Avatar, it was communicating things to me that I didn't understand yet, but I could sort of understand the cliff notes, because Avatar, in a broad sense, is a super accessible story. You could show it to a child, and it makes perfect sense. And so the movie gets to communicate certain things that, Last Samurai, if you show it to a little kid, why does it look so old? And so Avatar creates something that's timeless, and it takes the full bag of cliches, but it shows you why they worked the first time. And so I do understand your argument, and I do think you're right. But when I see Avatar, I see something that, yes, is old, but is sort of remastered. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think even at the core of what George Lucas did with Star Wars, like you'd openly state, he just went back to classic archetypes, classic fantasy. He borrowed heavily from Hidden Fortress and other samurai films and westerns, and he just put a space skin on it. That's what James Cameron did. Like, it's taking classic archetypes, classic stories, and then just giving it the most accessible version of it that also is kind of timeless. Because Dances with Wolves, it's very much a story about 1850s or whatever, I guess 1870s or whatever. And then Last Samurai, it's about feudal Japan at the end of an era. Like, it's very culturally specific. Why did Avatar make $3 billion? Not because of the United States, because it made over $2 billion everywhere outside of the United States, and it made a ton of money here. But it's like just like these very timeless character arcs, timeless themes that have resonated with people throughout all of human history, packaged with the absolute best technology. And there's a reason that it was made $3 billion. It just connected with people. And that word I just keep going back to, and it very much rewatching James Cameron films, he creates experiences. Like they're just different in the way that they suck you in to this world, and you just care about what's going on.
Yeah. One of the things I notice with James Cameron movies is that he likes to take things that he's observed and the things that he's experienced. So in Terminator 2, he was asking himself, what does it mean to be human and have human emotion? And so you get Terminator 2 and the famous "Why do you cry" scene, and T-800 trying to figure out, how does human emotion work? And then he starts to explore parenthood, and then Aliens comes out. And then he starts to explore love and loss, and then he makes Titanic. And so when it came time for Avatar, he's very much described, he loves the natural world. And so he comes out with Avatar, and he sort of just sits back, and he just sort of shows you how he feels about everything. And so when I watch a James Cameron movie, I sort of watch it from the lens of how does his real world experiences infuse in his movies. And I noticed with Avatar 2, and he said this openly in interviews, which is when it came time for the teenager, he started to think about how society makes him feel like he wasn't seen. And he starts to look at it from a parental perspective of how do you sort of teach your child, but sort of make them feel like they're seen. I just thought that was very interesting. I don't know how you feel about that.
I would need a little bit more time with the film to be able to say anything too in depth about it. I haven't seen the specific interviews you're referring to. I think the movie very wisely, without telling a super complex story, it didn't do the thing that I criticized the first one for.
Yeah.
It doesn't fit neatly into anything, and it really does kind of go off in this other direction of let's dive into family and belonging, and what does that look like in we're a family, but we're part of a tribe. What does that mean if we're putting these people in trouble so we go elsewhere? And the journey that they kind of go on throughout that, just touch on a. He said he wanted to make a more character-based film.
Yeah,
and you can very much see that there's all of these different family relationships in that film.
Yeah,
where even our villain, that there's a very complex situation there. There's all of these sons and daughters and adopted and all these different ways of exploring this kind of idea of belonging. I don't think I could come to any definitive conclusion on any of that after just only having seen it once. But it's just fascinating of the first one is just really about Jake finding the place he belongs. Yeah. And choosing the Na'vi over mankind. And then this takes that, and Jake's almost sidelined in this one. He's established in what he's chosen, and it takes all these other people, and it has them explore their place. Where do they belong? And Jake's family, where does it belong? But not Jake knows, I belong with my family. These people right here, wherever we're at, that's where I go. but then the family, where does the family belong? And so that's kind of interesting. Even like I'm just spitballing all this out as I'm just talking. That like you really did kind of put some interesting ideas in there. I got to take off. Any final thoughts for me or final question for me?
I'll leave you with this idea for how to watch the next movie is when you watch the first, if you rewatch the first film, try to look at it from a perspective of sort of take your own life experiences and just sort of pretend like you're on Pandora. And what I've noticed about this is whenever I'm in a low state or I'm trying to find my purpose in anything, I just always think about the first Avatar movie is that you have a responsibility to God, to your community, to your family, to the people you love. And so that movie just gives me a lot of meaning. And if you rewatch it, I hope you can look at it from that perspective. Anything for me?
No, I mean, I don't have any desire to try and diminish someone's experience with a film. So, you know, I would recommend checking out Dance. I actually need to rewatch Dance. I watched it like 1999, so it was over 20 years ago. So it's like I'm like, wait, I'm telling you that I last watched it before you were born, so I really need to rewatch the movie myself. But I mean, they're great films, and I think when you have those ones as the background, I think that's they're really good, and they tell the formula so well themselves. Yeah. That gives a different perspective. But at the same time, as we've already discussed, one of the roles of filmmakers is to retell the classic stories to a new generation with the new technology. And that's what James Cameron did, and he did it in a way that was way more popular than all the other versions combined. So, hey, thank you so much for having me on. I wanted to talk more about Avatar over on my main channel, and I literally got sick. We were supposed to record this a few weeks ago. I got sick. So thank you for having me on your channel. That gives me the opportunity to share some additional thoughts that I wanted to share about it. And I'm glad that we actually disagreed a little bit. We could find some common ground. We should explore some different ideas. So it was fun. And,
I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it, Sean. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and I'm just honored to, finally actually get to interact with you. I wouldn't say face to face, but where we can actually hear each other's voices. I've wanted to do this for very long. Seriously, thank you.
It was fun.
Thank you.
And